Today I'm going to be looking at one of these eBay cheapo RGB leads for PlayStation 1. I bought this to actually try on, I think it was actually back when I had the Philips KT3 3-chassis TV out, and I wanted to try the PlayStation on it. But it turned out the actual PlayStation wouldn't even read a disc, so I got a new laser for that and that didn't fix it. So I've actually bought a new PlayStation altogether now. And what I did find with the cable though is that even though all the RGB is connected up, it didn't have the blanking signal there, the switching voltage. So what I did was just basically hook up a external one to my pattern generator just so I could stick 5 volts or so up there, or that actually is reduced via a resistor inside that, so it ends up between the 1 and 3 volts that's needed. And I then got around having a look at this pin out online for the PlayStation, and it turns out it does actually have a 5 volt out on the PlayStation itself, so no point having an external one if you can use the one in the PlayStation. And I've just beeped out this lead. That says it comes from pin 10. This picture here is the actual port on the PlayStation, but if you look at the sort of top of the plug, obviously goes in like that, so if you flip it upside down, pin 10 is the third one from this end, and you can double check that because 11 and 12 is red and green, so it's easy enough to beep those pins out to the 3 little electrolytic capacitors here. And they're even, well, it's not quite red, green and blue, orange, green and blue. And you can just double check that you've got the right end of the plug if you want to beep one of these out. But it turns out pin 10 is actually this brown wire, so thankfully they've hooked it up. I think there's 9 different wires in this cable. And they've got it, I think, what was the pin, was it 8 or something? 6 or 8 I think. 1, 2, 3, 4 along. Yeah, and they've got it going to pin 8 of the Scart. No idea what that's for. But since we've already got the 5 volts up here, and I've got my wires here, one's just to ground, all these little red wires are joined to ground, because I needed that to get a reference for the other 5 volt, it needed ground as well, and I had the 5 volt which goes into pin 16, the blanking pin. So all I need to do is put a resistor the same as what I had in my pattern generator, which I think was around 180 ohms or something from memory, because this is basically going, this should have a 75 ohm to ground in the TV set. So you need to drop 5 volts down to that between 1 and 3 volts when going into a 75 ohm sort of resistance. So I'm going to pull these cables off and get rid of those, and we'll solder a resistor across between this brown wire and pin 16, and that should give the blanking voltage to tell the TV that it needs to switch to RGB input, because this was, when I plugged this lead into that other TV, it just came up through composite, and yeah, couldn't get it into RGB mode until I put a voltage up these extra wires that I added. But for some reason this cable, they're only about $12 or something, quite cheap. But the hassle is they don't actually switch the RGB on most of these sets. Even this later model LG that I got, the RGB still needs the blanking switching signal, so it's not like it's just earlier TVs that needed it. So we'll hook that resistor up and then we'll try it on the LG to see if it actually works. Now I did actually double check this too. When you fire up the PlayStation, you can measure that brown wire on pin, what did I say it was, 8. And yeah, I've got one of my wires that's hooked to one of these red ground wires here. Guess I've got to get the polarity the right way around. So that's 18, I guess. That pin is one of the grounds, and yeah, we've got 5 volts there, so it's definitely coming from that pin. Just to confirm it, and I've got a 180 ohm resistor. It's a brown, grey, brown, and I'm using a half watt since I've got tons of half watts and not many quarter watts left. But a quarter watt is all you need, or even less if you've got like one of those little 1/8 or 1/5 watt or whatever they were resistors. That'd be sufficient for this job. It's just a little, set up a little voltage divider. Just need to shorten the lead length on this and just, I guess, bend them a bit to suit. Maybe just bend it down, I guess, and solder it onto that pin. And we want the brown wire, pin 8. Tin the leads, or at least one of them. This one's 16. And then I'll tin that one where it is and probably can solder it on at the same time pretty much. That should be on, and we should now get, just double check, that's pin 16. Yeah, 2080, very hard to read, but 2018-16, that should be a 2018-16. Get rid of my little added on leads. So if we fire up our PlayStation with no load on it, it should still be 5 volts both sides of it, which it is. So we can actually put that back together. Finally, it's the best way of doing this. That should sit in a pretty good spot. Those capacitors are sticking out a bit. It would help, you've got to get these little bits that stick up in the right spot. They should slot in so that this plug can't move. And they're always difficult to line up exactly. That goes inwards, that can't be right. Shouldn't come out or go in, that's it. And we'll try and get the top bit just slot in the right spot as well. So we should now have a PlayStation capable of switching the TV into RGB mode. I wonder what Doom looks like in RGB. Let's just see if this PlayStation even works, because I haven't even tested it yet. I think it arrived about a week ago and I still haven't got round to it. I was making some promising noises. I guess I better check it on normal AV. Because you never know with stuff off eBay if it's actually going to work or not, even though they say it does. Especially with these older PlayStations, often the lasers are fairly worn out. Oh, that doesn't sound too good. What on earth is that doing? Doesn't sound very happy. How it's slipping. So what's going on? Is it slipping the disc? I think that's what's... Yeah, actually that doesn't clip in very well at all. Yeah, those ball bearings and this is shot, I think. Yeah, the whole thing's coming loose. Look, yeah, it's just come off. Ball bearing central part can slip on the rest of the platter. I mean, common things for breaking in PlayStations, but well, it's not a big deal to glue that part down probably, but still not good. Okay, so I've got it hooked up to this LG. I think we'll find it actually comes up over even the snow if it's in RGB mode. But I've got to put this onto AV1. And there we have it. But this PlayStation is not working 100%, as you can see. It didn't even read the disc this time. So you can see here, nice clean edges around this Sony symbol thing, and the graphics nice and clean, nice and sharp around the edges, which is something you don't get just through composite. So the fact that I overread the tuner and you're showing a nice clear picture like that shows we're definitely in RGB mode. But I'll hook the AV lead up after and show you the difference. There's not an awful lot on some images. You wouldn't really tell the difference between them. Other things is, yeah, definitely a bit of difference there. So PlayStation's having a bit of trouble reading things. Typical eBay special that doesn't work even though it says it does. But the guy's giving me a refund for the price of a new laser for it, so hopefully that'll fix the thing. Find out when it arrives. I want that, don't I? Click on it. It's having a bit of trouble loading games and stuff from memory. I mean from the memory card, not from my memory. See if it actually manages to do it. It seems to get to about there and then stops. But sometimes it will keep loading a bit of data slowly and finally get there. I think both the laser's low in this end, it also slips at times. You hear the disc making funny noises, and because the actual little top part of the platter's loose as well, so that's broken, and sometimes when you pull the disc off it comes off with it, the little ball bearing part. And you can just glue those back on with a bit of Aerodite or something, but it also seems to be having a lot of trouble actually reading the disc. So we're getting a little bit of weird Moira pattern, which I don't know whether that's the tube or something to do with the signal, but it doesn't look like that's actually going to load. Now up here should be a good test of the brightness levels, and you can see the floor fairly well. Hit the wrong control, wrong button. Oh yeah, it's plenty of brightness. Of course it covers up the scenery you want to see while you're adjusting it. Oh, better hit menu again, I guess. Oh, that's not too bad, I don't think. Some of these levels are very hard to play without enough brightness. Oh, we got some health. I don't think I really need it while I'm messing around. But at least you can see what you're doing. No, that's a door. Oh, there is still one that goes. Just a flappy guy. Where is he? Oh, there he is. He's underneath me. Come on. You're no fun. Where is it? There's a lever. Oh, there he is. Someone fights back. Oh, there's... No, it's not going to fly up. He knows I've got weapons. Well, oh, what have we got here? Another one. Come on, old fella. Him. Oh, there's another bit of loot. Oh, we got another one. Oh, it's another flyer. Oh, at least that works in the dark bits. It's got plenty of brightness. Okay, I'm on AV3 now, which is just the composite input, and I've got the composite lead on the PlayStation, so we'll compare that to the RGB. You can already see a lot of sort of interference pattern around that, and there's lines on the, even on that as well, on the other graphics. I think there was a little bit of that even on the other one, but that Sony symbol thing's got a lot of interference-y stuff on it. This doesn't look the best either. Guess I should compare that on the other one, because I don't think it was perfect on that either, but and yeah, that's got quite a bit of interference on it too. Some of this sort of stuff when you get in the game though, I can't really tell much difference. And on this it looks very similar. There are a few little things like on the edge of that red thing. They definitely aren't as good. And yeah, I guess that little passport's got a bit of interference pattern on the edge. Have a look at this on RGB. We know that screen's better. But what does that little Sony PlayStation symbol thing do? Oh no, that is, it's got a little bit of, I thought it had a little bit of jitter, but nowhere near as bad. And that's still flickering a bit. So maybe that's just the thing in the Sony chip or something. But I think that pattern on the PlayStation symbol was walking around before, sort of rotating or something. Yeah, that's the image on composite again, so it's definitely blurrier by the look of it. I know when I changed it before it was suddenly looking sharper than it was. I can't really tell what actually improves. I guess we've got that stuff in the distance, the motorbike. Oh yeah, it's definitely a sharper image. Bit hard to say exactly why, but it's definitely looking better. Just outright sharper, I think. Yeah, so this PlayStation's still loading up, so I'll have to wait until I get a new laser to really try this thing out, assuming that fixes it. But we've got the RGB working as the main thing. So this cable now switches the TV down that pin 16 of the Scart, the blanking input, into RGB, into the proper RGB mode, whereas this cable when I bought it didn't have that option wired in. Basically it had RGB connections, but was just reverting to composite input on the normal Scart connector. So I'm not sure why they made a Scart connector without that switching. Maybe some sets don't need the switching signal, but if this LG, which is I guess around the late 90s or something, maybe even early 2000s, or around the year 2000, I guess I was starting to go to the flat screen somewhere around then. But if even these need the signal, although this does use a Philips chip in it, maybe other ones don't need it, only the Philips ones or something. But yeah, that cable was basically useless as it came, but if you just solder a resistor in there, that gets the voltage across from the 5V out. Luckily they connected that up in there, so I didn't even have to try and break open the plug or something. And yeah, that should do the job. So thanks for watching.